Prohibition in Yates County goes back further than the 18th Amendment. Actually, there was a prohibition movement before the Civil War. And there's a difference between temperance, which was big in Yates County, and prohibition. Temperance is when I take a pledge not to drink.
Okay.
Prohibition is when I want a law passed so nobody can drink.
Yeah.
And both of those movements grew in the 1800s, right alongside the wine industry. The more wineries that were in Yates County, the stronger the prohibition and the temperance movement became.
Before the 18th Amendment was passed, the people voted on whether or not to have liquor licenses. These were known as license votes. By 1909, every town in Yates County had voted on not having licenses. When the 18th Amendment was passed, Prohibition in Yates County was not enforced. However, by 1924, the enforcement of the 18th Amendment was much more strict. This led to an increase in raids. There were raids all throughout the 1920s, and these were often quite interesting. One raid involved a man who was driving a hearse into Penn Yan that was filled with alcohol. Another raid involved a shootout right on Cuca Street in the middle of Penn Yan. This shootout was between a police officer and a man who had been smuggling alcohol into Yates County.
Let's see. Happy Days Are Beer Again was the song in the 1930s. Actually, when it first ended, the only thing that was allowed was for beer to be sold, and then they worked into other things as the time went by. But oh yeah, the restaurants and the hotels in town, they got their liquor licenses again after 1933. And people bought it, and it was, back to normal. Well, lasting impact of Prohibition. I think people realize that it's difficult to legislate that type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think they learned a lesson from that because it was widely ignored, and people didn't respect the law.
Yeah.
And so I think legislators especially learned a lesson about that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I had a grandfather here up on North Avenue in Penn Yan who made beer back in his furniture refinishing shop, and yeah, he sold it to his neighbors.
Did he ever get
Never got busted for it. No. The coolest story is there was a winery over on the west side of Cuca Lake, the White Top Winery, and it was near, well, it was just off the end of the bluff. And they got raided twice during Prohibition. They were the only winery to be raided. And one time they dumped 10,000 gallons of wine and brandy into Cuca Lake. And some guy wrote a letter to the editor of the Yates County Chronicle and asked if that raised the percentage of alcohol in Cuca Lake to the point where the village of Penn Yan, who was pumping water out of the lake and selling it to people, if they would be guilty of not manufacturing, but transporting alcoholic beverages. And that was a pretty good thing. But that was the biggest raid on the wineries. Most of the wineries adjusted by getting into what they call sacramental wine.
Yeah.
Which,
for like the churches and
yeah. But people would buy sacramental wine and drink it ordinarily anyway. And the biggest winery in the area was Garrett. And what he did was he made the wine here, shipped it down to his place in Brooklyn. He had a big plant down there. And they would take the alcohol out of it and turn it into extracts, like vanilla extract and you know, different types of those type of things. And so they survived.
Yeah.
At least some of them did.
Yeah.
Some of them didn't.
Yeah.
But as soon as Prohibition ended in the 30s, most of the wineries got right back into operation.